I have been on a little bit of a personal pilgrimage that I decided after I got reelected in 2018. I'd been in office for 25 years, and I wanted to do something to recharge and reflect. And so I created a little pilgrimage that I called the Virginia Nature Triathlon, and I did it 3 years in a row. 2019, I hiked from Harpers Ferry to the Tennessee border on the Appalachian Trail, 560 miles. 2020, I bicycled the Blue Ridge Parkway and Skyline Drive, 320 miles. And this year, I canoed the whole James River from Iron Gate in Allegheny County to Fort Monroe, where 20 and odd Africans came ashore in 1619. Slaves captured by the English off a Dutch ship brought into the English colonies. Slaves until they set foot on Virginia soil. And as soon as they set foot on Virginia soil, they were enslaved because they'd been pulled against their will, but there was no slavery in England. And there was no slavery in Virginia. And so they were sort of like human question marks. And the earliest Virginians had to decide, and it took them about 40 years to decide, the status of these people who were also legal question marks. It was an amazing journey to be wrapped up in Virginia nature, but also wrapped up in our story and our narrative. And over the course of it, when I started, I didn't know that I'd be living through a pandemic and 2 impeachment trials and a violent attack on the Capitol and righteous protests against for racial justice inspired by the murder of George Floyd or the desire to take down statues on Monument Avenue where I live. So all of that happened during this pilgrimage. And I was thinking recently, having completed it just a couple months ago, like, what would I say about the state of the nation during the time between when I started this and when I finished? And the Rorschach word that came to my mind was humbling. Pandemic, attack, death, impeachment trials. Humbling is a word whose root means grounded. And here's a challenge that I'm grappling with right now as I conclude. Humility is a virtue. He who exalts himself shall be humbled. He who humbles himself shall be exalted. The Bible is filled with those reversals. The last shall come first, the first will come last. Wisdom of the world is foolishness in the eyes of God. The Bible is filled with these reversals. And we do deeply believe that humility is a virtue, but not really in politics. We want to say about ourselves that we're great. We want to say our nation is indispensable. We want to say our nation is exemplary. If humility is an individual virtue, can it not also be the case that it should be a societal or national virtue? And so one of my things I'm thinking about since I've finished this journey is, can we inject kind of a political life or political identity with more humility without being less confident of or assertive of or positive about the values that we share?